Good morning, or whenever you're watching this. Hey there, it's me, Lottie, and today what we're going to do is talk about adoptees doing their own work. I have been wanting to do this video for a while now. I'm wondering if we too often feel that reunion or finding one's biological relatives is the answer, the missing link. Now, I think it is probably part of a missing link, but I have come to believe that there is a lot of work I can do on myself as it relates to having been adopted, whether or not I ever decide to search. Hi there. Whether I ever decide to search for biological parents, siblings, relations. I think they're two separate roads, and one or both can lead to me feeling more healthy and happy and whole. So this just prompted me to give some thought to what kind of work can a person do, or let me just share what kind of work I have been doing as I have been on this road to learn about what I have now learned is called adoption trauma and how it may affect the individual throughout their whole life. I have learned a lot, and it really has helped me understand some of why I react the way I do and interact the way I do. And me learning how to unpack that and reconfigure my tapes, so to speak, or my behavior patterns has everything to do with the kind of work I'm doing on myself around self-care and self-healing and inner child work. And during that process, I came to the conclusion that I was not ready to search for biofam. It seems like a lot of well-meaning friends and family and a lot of even adoption forward literature and media talk a lot about the search for fam and how you need to find your family and it's your right to find your family. And, some would even go so far as to say everyone needs to know who their family is, or everyone needs to know where they came from. And I would almost feel pushed in that direction to locate my biological family. And I'm not saying that that is not a part of the equations. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that I do not think adoptees should search for their biological family. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is there are ways that you can support the process so that it continues to be in your best interest and part of your road to healing, because I assume that's why we're doing this, to for that sense of connection, a sense of belonging, feeling that something is missing, or maybe somehow coming up on a blockage in your life, or questioning maybe what you've been doing with your life. I feel like I'm a little late to the game. I'm a little bit older doing this work, so maybe this is a midlife crisis of sorts. Anyway, if you are an adoptee and you're just now starting out, or thinking about learning more about the impact of adoption, there are many routes that you can go. I was fortunate to come across some resources that I didn't even know existed. And here I am, in my 50s. I didn't even know a lot of the language around adoptee rights, adoptee trauma. I certainly did not realize so much of what I had perceived to just be challenges in my relationships. I definitely did not immediately connect them to being adopted, which may seem ridiculous, but I'm also biracial. I think, and this is a whole nother video, but I think being biracial, being a mixed race Black woman, Black person, took the forefront. It took up everything. It took all the space. I didn't have time, space, energy, or encouragement to explore really either of those issues. And I guess in terms of what I was being faced with on a daily basis, being mixed race took the forefront. So this video came about because I was curious about my own ebb and flow of interest in looking for biological family. I would be really excited about it or motivated by it because there was always like a fear factor involved for me, but I would be really motivated to do it for a while. And then I would totally back off from it from a while. It would just not resonate in the pit of my stomach. And I also began to wonder, what am I going to do with these new found relatives or relationships? I had to admit, I haven't always done relationships very good. Or at least in my mind, it didn't seem like I did relationships very well. Like I didn't have a history of doing relationships very well. So I was like, maybe I need to work on understanding how it is I interact, because this seems like it's going to be one of the most challenging relationship undertakings that I have ever done. I've already been doing a lot of self-work. I mean, I think that's what ultimately, through layers, excavating layers and layers of toxic thought patterns and behavior and looking at history and all this stuff, is how I finally circled back around to, oh, this is coming from being adopted. Whoa. Who'da thunk? In my day and age, we just were not, there was not a overarching narrative. First of all, there wasn't really an overarching narrative of self-discovery and introspection. And there wasn't a communication forward type approach to family issues. You know what I mean? So it just wasn't talked about. It was not really talked about. Not that it was put out as bad or good, but when something isn't talked about and you can kind of feel the tension in the air, or you kind of feel the energy saying, don't talk about this, then you just can't help but get the idea that there's something bad about it. Something shameful or secret, you know? So I just didn't know. I didn't know. So what I decided to do, since I was having all these ebb and flows and back and forths and fitful starts and stops and just so many conflicting feelings about, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Should I do this? Should I do this? What am I doing? I decided to educate myself as best as I could about the adoption process and how it affects the adoptee. So I came across two podcasts in particular that are super helpful and just taught me so much through listening to other adoptee stories. One is called Adoptees On, and the other one is called Who Am I Really? I love these two podcasts, and there are more. These are just the first two, and I plan to do more videos with resources such as this as I come across them. But the first ones, like I said, that I came across were these two podcasts, Adoptees On and Who Am I Really? And both of them are from the adoptee's perspective and sharing stories of adoptees in reunion or that pursued reunion. And I will say Adoptees On also has segments on healing, where they specifically talk about issues such as navigating the holidays as an adoptee with therapists that are adoptee informed. And they talk a lot with different therapists that are adoptee informed, which who knew, right? I didn't know. So I have gained so much perspective and insight from listening to those podcasts. Every time I listen to one, something resonates to where I could do a video right afterward and talk about as how that relates to me. In addition to those two podcasts that I mentioned, a lot of people already know about this book, but I'm taking it seriously now because I've started it and I've stopped it. And I think one of the reasons why I keep starting it and stopping it is because it's one of those things that, well, for me, has really hit close to home. And not being accustomed to talking about it in this kind of depth had me backing up. I was like, whoa, somebody is peeking in all of my business here, all in my shadow self. So The Primal Wound by Nancy Verrier is a very, very popular book as it relates to the adoption experience with individuals. And I think you can get a lot out of reading this book. And I have been, which I'll add this as a resource, I have been journaling a lot about it. I just opened a Google Doc and do voice to text and just kind of try to keep a running record of how I feel and maybe some of the action steps that I've taken toward this. And a lot of stuff has come up also about my childhood and interesting interactions or things that I know have been shaped by being an adoptee or being in a biracial family, and just a lot of things. So keeping a journal specifically about the unpacking and the adoption process and your work within it, I find to be helpful. Another thing that I've been doing lately that came up and out that I didn't plan on is, so this is my journal that is not the digital journal, but what I've been doing is making art. I've been making these intuitive collages. It's interesting how some of the things that are where my mindset is comes up as it relates to working on this work. So this one, for example, came out a lot about having the right to exist and not feeling a need or justifying the need to explain myself. A lot of things on authenticity and, this one I thought was another one that was really interesting. That, again, working out stuff in art form. All of these are things that I would do whether you decide to ever search for a biological relative or not. And the more work you can do on yourself around how to navigate relationships and what happens in reunion or what are the potential ups and downs or pitfalls to a reunion relationship, the more you'll be able to navigate it in a healthy way, whether it results in a long-term relationship or it just doesn't work out. I mean, sometimes these things don't work out, and that's real. So it's a lot to think about when you're going into this. And I just suggest doing the best to put yourself in the best possible position, because it's not guaranteed that we're going to meet people that have been doing this kind of work for themselves, healed people. I'm not saying anything negative or bad about our relatives, but we just don't know what their situation may be. We don't know what emotions or triggers or wounds might be opened up with this whole situation. So I just think it's in the best interest of self-love, self-care, and self-healing to approach this as one would do any kind of relationship, like whether it's marriage counseling or how to have a better relationship with your kids or how to do better at work, or I just don't like the way my relationships have been going. Let me find out what is going on with me. Let me find out, how do I maintain my calm? How do I not be taken off my square? How do I handle when I am triggered by other things? Because let me tell you, it's going to bring up some stuff. It is going to bring up some stuff. How can it not bring up some stuff? This is only your life that you're talking about, right? This is only your life you're talking about. So let me reiterate things that I think a person can do to navigate their own experience of adoption would be to educate yourself as much about adoption trauma, adoptee rights. Educate yourself as much as you can about the adoption process and its effect on the adoptee, especially during the time in which your adoption took place. For me, mine took place in the 60s, so it was a lot different than it is now as it relates to open adoption, closed adoption, adoptee rights, access to files and papers and that kind of thing. The other thing I suggest that you do is listen to a lot of adoptee narratives or podcasts such as what I mentioned, or however you get your information. The two that I mentioned are excellent sources of information. Journaling, finding a way to chronicle this journey. Some place where you can get it out and think about it. If you're able to and willing to and think you need to, seek out adoption-centered, adoptee-centered, adoptee-focused therapy. That would be a great idea. You could do that before you even do a search. There are various support groups online, even on Facebook. I haven't done a lot of work with those groups, so if I come across any that I feel are particularly useful, they'll show up in another resource video. And again, like I said, The Primal Wound. She has another book too that I have on deck next. I'm making myself get through this. I figured if I made a video about it, then I got to do it, right? So, The Primal Wound, working it out through art or whatever form of expression you need. The overall point of this video is that for me, I discovered that there are two different things going on. There is thinking about search and reunion with biological family, and there is the impact of adoption on the individual, that would be me, and that no matter what happens in this other realm, because I tend to ebb and flow, or it's a slow process. People are not just like, oh, hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm your birth mother. Come on, let's do this. Like, no, no. Especially when it comes to like ancestry DNA matches and, anyway, that's a whole nother story. But there's a lot I could do for me. There was still a lot I could do for me that did relate to being adopted that had nothing to do with whether or not I find and am accepted by biological family relatives. So that was just a real casual, loose vlog style update, I guess, on where I am. I just want you to stay healthy and be safe. And I hope you're doing as well as can be given this time on the clock of the world. If you have particular resources that you have been using to navigate the adoptee experience, then I would love to know about them, because we need to know this stuff. We need to know this stuff. I really do think it's an area of work I need to go deep into. I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that. And the more resources, the more tools, the better. So until I see you in the next video, take care.